This is the Following the Joy podcast, a place to talk about being the best version of yourself, following your heart, making the changes needed, and having fun on this adventure we call life. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, then I invite you to stick around. I'm your host, Debbie Westwell, and this is Following the Joy. Okay, so today I've got Briony Gunson to come and talk with me. And Briony is a breathwork coach, a trauma release coach. She does meditation, she does somatic inquiries, she likes wiggly hugs. She's an all-round amazing human, and I have been working with her as my coach for this past year, and she's amazing and has a lot to talk about. So hi Briony, thanks very much for being with us today and being with me today and talking to me about all things to do with travel, getting confident, and then new beginnings as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I love the insertion of wiggly hugs into that intro. So I'm literally wiggling in my seat. So that's good.
I know, I once tried to give you like a normal hug and it was like, no, it's got to be.
There's also some wiggling happening here. And that's my vibe. So
brilliant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast as well. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I appreciate it. So, right, let's just talk about all things travel, because I think the one thing I love about you is you've got so much going on, but you seem to have built your life around this great, like, you don't actually need a vacation or a holiday because you're just living your best life anyway. And I think in one of our sessions, you said about travel with purpose, and that's what you're doing at the moment, but you seem to be everywhere. You've just come back from Italy, and I think you've got Mexico coming up and all kinds of things. So can you tell me a bit about your traveling with purpose and how you got to kind of that point?
Yeah, thank you. I was reflecting a few years back around the fact that I really do love traveling, and that travel for me represents different things. I sort of was inquiring more deeply during the pandemic, because obviously for many people, travel really shifted and changed, and the availability of that really diminished. So sort of prior to the pandemic, I'd been already thinking about like how travel was important to me. I wanted to experience more of that. But also as I got older, I didn't want to just, go abroad somewhere just for like the sake of it, or basically I'm kind of stressed out, so I need a holiday, or it's in some way trying to escape from my life. I started feeling like I wanted to travel a lot more with some purpose. Now, obviously, travel for me represents, and it can mean different things to different people. So this can be an interesting point of inquiry anyway. It's like, what does travel mean to someone? For me, it's like new experiences. It's a sense of adventure, learning new languages or about new cultures, like literally seeing the world with new eyes and having that kind of like fresh experience. I remember someone said that traveling is a bit like being a bee and like gathering pollen from different flowers, and then when we kind of come home we make honey from all that pollen, in the sense that we're sort of like really learning from all these rich experiences, and it really enriches us.
I love that description.
I know, it's really charming. I wiggle about that description. And sort of from starting to get a deeper perspective on what travel meant to me, and then having travel sort of much more limited during the pandemic, I started thinking, well, how can I still access that same level of thinking about freedom and like new experiences and learning and like new cultures, new languages? How can I access that same level of experience but more locally, and just sort of challenging myself to get clear on what travel meant to me and how I can recreate that. Anyway, so point being is that I've been exploring about traveling with purpose, getting clear on what travel means to me, and then really looking to challenge the beliefs I had around, in order to travel, I need to have time off work. In order to travel, I need to pay for that. So I need to save up money and then pay to go and travel. And instead, because I'm a mindset coach, I love to explore our belief systems and look to challenge that, and then think what would be a more abundant version of exploring my desire to travel with purpose. And what I kind of came up with was I don't pay to go abroad, I get paid to go abroad. And I now, through the work I do, I'm running retreats abroad where I truly am getting paid to go abroad. And just most recently mentioned that, I've been traveling in Europe. I was invited by a client. I was paid to go abroad. And so the point being is that, I've woven travel into my life because it's a passion of mine. And I've created a life where that is part of it. And it also works for me, rather than me waiting for the right time to go on holiday. It's like it's part of my work, and I'm traveling with purpose, and I'm getting paid to go abroad to do those things. So yeah, so it's been this journey of getting clear on what I want, challenging the beliefs that say I can or can't, what I can have and what's available to me, and then being really curious about how that shows up, and actually like weaving that into my life. And now that's like how I'm living my life, in sense of traveling with purpose, and then creating a life that I don't need to take a holiday from, because like I'm traveling already. I love what I do. There's a lot of balance there. And yeah, it's ticking all the boxes.
Oh, do you know what? Like what you've just described is like literally my dream, and I am obviously working towards that, as you know. But I think a lot of people listening will probably be the same. Like, how do I incorporate travel? How do I like get paid to travel? I mean, I think this isn't something that's just, happened overnight for you, is it? I think it's something you've been working towards for a while. But I think and we'll come back to the retreat bit in a minute, because I'm obviously super interested about that as well. But you briefly touched on mindset there. Are you finding that like since COVID, or has it always been a thing that there's an awful lot of people needing to change an awful lot of mindsets in order to be able like to achieve what they want, if that makes sense?
Yeah, do you mean in terms of like there being a greater prevalence of self-limiting beliefs, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, because on one hand, the pandemic has created, it's like this big emotional impact, and a bit like any kind of impact, if you imagine like even the idea of an asteroid hitting the earth, no, it's just sort of something hitting, and there's a boom, there's a big shock wave, right? And it's like woof, and it ripples out. So we've got this, like the pandemic is a big impact, so it's like a big impact, there's a ripple wave that comes out from that. Different people are impacted in different ways. Some people feel it more than others. So on one hand, I would say that it's challenged people's belief systems more than ever. And the things that people perhaps took for granted now no longer take that for granted. And then, myself included in that. And there's like certain freedoms or privileges or stability that you assume will always be there. And then it shows you the fragility of life, as well as the so much of the society we're part of just keeps going based on its own momentum, about like how fragile a lot of that is. So I'd say that it's as an experience, it's invited a lot of people to question what they thought to be true, or what they thought to be possible. And it almost depends on like a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. I think some people have been forced into letting go of what they thought they knew, and then needing to explore new avenues because they've kind of had to, like life has forced them to do that. And then other people are more that kind of closed mindset for various reasons, and not that one is better than the other, it's just kind of noticing and observing people's reactions to things and like how they think. I have definitely noticed that there can be, should we say, a lot more excuses for why things won't work, or a lot more reasons why we need to be cautious and risk adverse. Whereas the way I see it is like everything is changing and shifting. We're in this real state of transition. Now more than ever is a good time to be taking bold moves, because it's like the structures underneath our feet are kind of shifting and changing. So it's like, why not now? There's never been a better time. For example, with our type of work, it's never been easier to earn money online. We've never had access to so much information to support us in that journey. And if it's like, if not now, then when, right? And it's like, it's always easy to say, now it's not a good time, now it's not safe, now it's not, now it's always going to be a reason not to step out of our comfort zone. So yeah, so just coming back to your first question about then thinking about what I phrase as self-limiting beliefs, I would say that it just depends. It's almost like this big impact has created a huge shift in people's awareness. And so I see now more than ever, lots of people going for it, but also so many other people feeling that instability, and then perhaps more as a defense mechanism, feeling freaked out, feeling scared, therefore feeling very risk adverse, and like getting emotionally invested in stories that can seem so true in terms of scarcity, lack, instability, and then being like, I can't, I don't want to challenge that because it feels too scary.
Yeah, and that's a massive journey that we've been on, like you've been on with me this year, isn't it? Because I've had some like family issues. Briony's helped me work through some of our sessions. I've literally been like, Briony's just held the space for me as I'm just like trying to actually just even breathe. But I massively resonate with what you're saying about that kind of like lack and scarcity, because I was always coming at life from that, like I can't do this, like I am not special enough to do this, I don't have the qualifications to do this, or for me as well, it was a fear of putting myself forward. So like a fear of like sticking my head above the parapet and being like, hi, does anybody want to work with me? Even like starting this podcast was a big like stepping stone for me. I've always been like a perfectionist. I've always like, and that whole, when you're saying if now, not when, I was always like, I've got to be skinny to be able to do this. I've got to have completed this qualification in order to be able to take the next step. I've got to be in the right place in a stable job. And at the moment I am in between, living between my parents' house because my mum's not great of health, and like my house in Bournemouth, and I've been the whole time going, I can't, because I'm putting it off and putting it off. And I think like that's the one thing that I've massively learned from you along this journey, is just get it started, just get it done, just take those steps. But it has been a huge mindset shift, and I think that's essentially what I'm trying to aim for. I want to be you when I grow up, because I want to be able to have that travel with purpose kind of thing.
I love crystal jewellery. If you want something gorgeous to wear on your wrist that has some amazing healing properties, check out Nisi B Jewellery on social media or on her website, which is www.nisibjewellery.co.uk, and that is spelt NISEYBEEJEWELLERY. Go treat yourself or someone you love to something wonderful.
Now, hang on, you want to travel with purpose. Do you ever feel like you need a break from traveling with purpose just to put your feet up by a pool and relax? Or are you incorporating that in your travel with purpose?
That's a great question. And I, as you know, Debbie, I'm like really hot on self-care. So for me, self-care is a form of self-resourcing. That is topping up the tank as we go, like continuing to refuel ourselves. Because it is important to notice where, I know for me, because I've got conditioning around like needing to be a good girl and work hard, that can like sneak on in there. And we're like, well, Briony, we're traveling with purpose, and like we've created this amazing life. It can be easy for me to then, like, my tendencies towards avoiding feeling will be like to overwork. So if I don't want to feel something, I'll just push myself into keeping on working. So I've noticed I need to just make sure that there is genuinely, authentically like stop gaps and like downtime to really let myself like rest. Now, I can still experience resistance towards rest, like resistance towards slowing down. Because again, like, you know, the so much of what I've created is amazing and I want that. I just want more of that. But again, it's like, where is that action coming from? Is it like more scarcity led? I'm actually like afraid, or of other people's fears getting into my head, and then I'm sort of scared to slow down because of what, you know? So I have been more vigilant to make sure that I'm genuinely letting myself rest and chill. So even if I'm traveling with purpose, that doesn't mean that I always have to be like always on, you know, and go. If anything, I just take things way more slowly. And for example, even after traveling, because if I'm traveling for retreats, or I was off on this supporting a bike ride from Paris to Geneva recently, and you know, as part of that, like I'll literally block out in my diary rest days. Because if there's a blank space in my diary, I'm going to fill it, you know? And yeah, it's like, unless we make time for rest, it's not going to happen. And there's a nice quote by a lady called, I think her name is Joyce. I think it's Sunada. And I may be butchering that, but she said, if we don't take time for our wellness, we'll be forced to take it for our illness.
Yeah, and that's so true.
Because I've experienced really intense burnout and my physical health really suffered because of stress. It's like, I'm not going back to that place. I'm not sacrificing my well-being for my work. And I also believe that rest gets to be productive, because as we're slowing down, we're letting our body decompress, we're coming out of maybe slight fight flight. We're able to see things more clearly, we get new ideas, we meet new people, we're maybe open to the abundance and the opportunity that's already here, So actually, that's how I let my rational mind let me rest. Because I've sort of gone like, hey, rational mind, if you let Briony rest, then we're going to get more ideas and then we can do more things. My rational mind's like, okay, fine, I'll let you rest then. So I've sort of like negotiated with the part of me that likes to overwork, by convincing it that rest is productive, which in my experience, it genuinely is.
I'm loving that you have to negotiate with yourself. It's a little bit like, I mean, I have conversations inside my own head as well about all sorts of things, and then I answer myself back because sometimes I'm the only person that makes sense. But so I think what you're saying is like, people need to kind of, I'm just thinking about like the listeners and what kind of pieces of advice that they can kind of glean from this. So I think if people are taking more of a conscious understanding about what's going on in the bodies, like what has changed. Like for me, for example, just recently I've had a 3-day migraine, and I know that they come on because I've got tension somewhere in my muscles. It's generally my neck, but generally it's due to some form of stress that causes that in the first place. So I think it's about listening to your body and noticing any changes, and then knowing that way of impacting. But like, have you got like a couple of tips that you would advise people just to what they can do, what they can look out for to kind of like know that, oh, self-care is needed right now? Because it sounds like you've got it like nailed with conversations with yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love that you talk to yourself. And yeah, I'm constantly checking in with me all the time. And if not out loud, literally out loud, like sitting in my head, I'm like coaching myself, like being a cheerleader, having good chats with me. So yeah, so in terms of like tips around, really starting to condition ourselves to get on board with self-care, it's I would say firstly, it is helpful to know what the narrative is around feeling resistance towards slowing down or self-care, because that's really revealing. Because you can like with me chatting to that part of me that likes to overwork and like get shit done, if I know that rest is productive, I can literally say out loud, like, rest gets to be productive. It's more than okay to rest. So I sort of reassure myself. So I'd say firstly, get clear on what those stories are and like lovingly challenge them, right? So often with my clients, people will say, that they're afraid to slow down because it almost gives them this like zingy edge. And if they stop, they're worried they'll never get started again, or they feel like it's selfish or it's indulgent, or that they're somehow not worthy, of taking good care of themselves, that they need to play the martyr somehow, they need to be there for other people. But then there's like a resentment there, like that they're doing that. So sort of, be honest with yourself and get clear on how do we stand in our own way, and what stories are we giving meaning to, and with love, like, and self-respect, like, take a deep breath, be honest with yourself, like, and just get curious about those stories. So that's the mental piece or the mindset piece. But then just starting to tune in, like everyone's body will be slightly different. But like for me, the classic hallmarks of I'm starting to feel I'm basically overextended. So on a physical, mental, emotional, energy level, maybe one or all of those, I'm quite depleted. So we might be feeling more reactive, so more emotionally sensitive, particularly, especially being a woman, certain times of the month. So noticing, are you getting more emotionally reactive? Are you feeling, things like you mentioned, like a tension headache? Or for me, I used to get, my jaw felt really tight and tired. I used to experience a lot of IBS issues, like issues with my digestion. Are we telling ourselves a story? I don't have enough time. I can't do this. I can't do that. We're kind of making our world smaller. So I'd say everyone is slightly different, but everyone will have their own little red flags, right? Their own little ways in which their body is speaking to them, saying, hey, you need to slow down. And our body will keep speaking to us louder and louder and louder until we're in a place where we really need to have some kind of intervention. But often by then, people are so focused on other people or there being more problems that it can then end up fueling the situation that they're in. So I'd say focus on the stories in the mind, lovingly challenge those, and then think, in what ways is my body showing me that we're in a stress response? And am I physically holding a lot of tension? Yeah, in around my eyes, my jaw, my shoulders, my belly. Do I have issues with my digestion, with my sleep? Am I getting snappy at the people that I love? Am I holding my breath a lot? Like all of those are just little signs and signals that we need to slow down and consciously make a decision to top up the tank. And again, we all know how, if you stop any person in the street and say, how do you take care of a human being? Like have like a little list of instructions. You're like water, sunlight, movement, food, like connection, like love. So it's like, right, consciously, go make those things happen. And I make lists. I have a self-care menu, which you know about, where it's like inviting people to pick one thing a day from that menu, like a list of self-care. Because when we're in a stress response, one of my other clients said this, and I never forgot it. She said, stress makes you stupid. Yeah. Stress makes you stupid. So when we're in a stress response, it's hard to remember all the things that serve you. And I don't know about you, Debbie, but I can't be bothered with like a 20 list checklist in the morning, 20 things to do to like get my vibration a certain way. Like that can end up stressing me out and feels like a chore. So just having like one or two key things that I do every day, but then there's a bigger list that I'm constantly referring to. It just means that I'm more often than not, I'm choosing me and I'm choosing to top up the tank. And the accumulation of all that over time creates like massive shifts. So I'd say get people to get clear on the mindset piece, the body piece, those red flags, and then start to layer in self-care and feel the benefits of that. Like consciously acknowledge that you feel better when you do those things, and then just keep choosing more of that.
Oh, that is gold. And I'm thinking, I'm like nodding along because you're ticking off all of those lists of things. Like if you're feeling like this and you're being grumpy with people, I'm like, yeah, I've been there. I'm sure everybody listening is probably like, yeah, I'm doing at least one of those at the moment, because I think everybody needs like self-care and stuff. And like for me, it's very important. And obviously you taught me that, like to have like that self-care menu, and I've got it in the back of my journal, which is great because actually when you are in that stupid stressed mode, you don't know what's going on, you can't think for yourself, and you can't even plan. But at least if you can go and watch like stupid cat videos on Facebook for 10 minutes or whatever, it just makes you laugh and go, oh yeah, okay, that's the reason why I wrote that list in the first place. Absolutely love that. Okay, so for me, I think I'm going to take away from this is I need to think about how I can have that self-care list even when I'm traveling, because it's not always the same as it is in the UK. And I massively hear about what you're saying about like your body will only take so much and then it stops. I think a friend of mine calls it I think she says that you get hit with a twig, you get hit with a stick, and then you get hit by the full tree. So it's a little bit like, oh, I've got a bit of a pain in my shoulder, and then suddenly it's like, oh, now I can't move my shoulder, and then suddenly it's like I've broken my arm because my body wasn't telling me to stop doing something. That's a very extreme example, but I think it's happened to me in the past before, and then like my friend has like sagely gone, yeah, you didn't listen, did you? So yeah, I think it's really important. Gold, absolutely gold nuggets. I think it's wonderful. I think everybody needs to have a Briony in their life, because I've got a Briony in my life and it's ace.
Well, I love having you in my life, Debbie, too. So we have great fun in our sessions. It's always really great. Yeah.
I mean, that's the way forward, isn't it? You just gotta laugh your way through it. Now, let's talk about these retreats that you do, because I think you do some in Mexico. Are you doing some in the UK as well?
So historically, I've done them in the UK, and then I have mainly right now they're abroad, which is very exciting. So I've got in January, I'm co-hosting a retreat called Awakening Through Trauma with my business partner, Kelly Carpenter. And Awakening Through Trauma, depending on people's experience and knowledge around this topic, it can sound pretty heavy. And I say that because when me and Kelly were working to come up with like the retreat schedule, and she had that as the title, I was like, whoa, that's a really bold, statement. And essentially the premise is that when we have the right tools and support, we can really lean into past events where there was some significant emotional impact that we're still struggling to resolve in some way. So we will all have experiences in our past that have left like a mark on us, and that in some way we either repeat, or there's like a story connected to that past event that we struggle to shake off or move through or let go of. And so it continues in some way to present itself in our life, either how we show up in the world or the way we see the world, the actions that we take or don't take. And we do a series of workshops within that, for example, like inner child work and like shadow work, dealing with the mother wound. So some deep inquiry work, group work, and then breath work as part of that. So we've done one in Mexico already in January 2023. Then we did Barcelona, May 2023. And then now we'll be back in Mexico next January 2024. So that's going to continue to happen roughly every 6 months. I think we've
You're
got
doing Barcelona again?
We are, yeah. So it might not be Barcelona, but somewhere in Europe. So every 6 months, we're basically hosting this retreat, kind of yo-yoing between Mexico and Europe. So yes, so those are all scheduled in. And there's another retreat I'm leading out in the US, which the location and dates are still being ironed out. And that's with it's a mindset container where it's myself and other coaches supporting people through that experience. And we're having like a physical challenge connected to it, because often, like, physical challenges are going to bring stuff up. We're going to really meet our edges when we're pushed physically. So I'm supporting this retreat out in the US where we'll be out in nature. I don't know where yet, but that's going to be happening as well.
Oh, amazing. I mean, it sounds awesome. I am definitely going to be coming on one of your retreats at some point. But yeah, you're right. It sounds a bit like, I think when I first saw it, I was like, oh, trauma. Ooh. Am I ready to face that? Like, it's shining a mirror right in my face. Am I ready to face this yet? I think having worked with you now for almost a year, I probably am ready to face it. But I think at the beginning I was like, oh, no. But anyway, let's do a bit of a plug. So if people want to hear more about you, learn more about your retreats, where can they find the information, Briony?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I've got a website, which is just my name. So brionygunson.com. And then I'm also Briony Gunson on the gram, on Instagram. And I would say Instagram is kind of my main home on the web. And otherwise, like, if you're that way inclined for like Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you can go and find me there. But I mainly hang out on Instagram there, where I'm really just sharing, perhaps oversharing, sharing, like parts of my life and my journey and like the things that I'm learning, connected to like mindset work, breath work, obviously the retreats. I'm a bit of a fan of doing cold water and lots of like being outdoors barefoot, grounding exercises and all the rest of it. So probably lots of pictures of me with my feet and getting in and out of bodies of cold water. So yeah, so people can come and say hey. And I also have content on Insight Time. I've got guided meditations there. So also if people fancy checking out, some of the other work that I do, there's that available too.
Amazing. Thanks ever so much. Now, before we wrap this up, because this has been fabulous, I've got 2 questions for you. Okay. Travel related. So the first one, what would you never leave home without when traveling?
The first thing that popped into my head was a charging pack.
Oh, I like it. It's very sensible.
Sexy answer. A charging pack. That's apparently what my mind was offering up. And I'm going to stick with it. That's my answer.
I love it. All right. Okay. So question number 2 is, where's on your bucket list to travel next to? Because I know that you've been all over the place.
Oh, that's such a good question.
I feel like that's part A. Part B will be, how are you going to make this happen to travel with purpose and be paid?
Yeah, yeah. Saying that, I was like, where do I want to get? Like, what opportunities are coming up? I'm really keen to explore more of South America. And what's interesting is as I progress on my journey, I love going to new places, and I more prefer going into nature. So historically, I might like really love to go to a city and like have like a city break. And I still love going to art galleries and museums and like maybe a few restaurants. But actually just nowadays, I'm like, get me out into nature. So that would be exciting to go to some more places in South America, particularly Colombia and Peru. And otherwise, there with the bike ride that I just supported from Paris to Geneva, there's further opportunities to go to like Azerbaijan with that kind of trip. Yeah. So I think, I'm sort of increasingly getting a bit more open-minded, let's put it that way, about like the opportunities that will come, and like a certain level of surrender, in terms of like, I kind of know what I like, but I'm really open to seeing what the universe brings me in terms of opportunities and people and doors opening. So so who knows, probably South America, but then perhaps more exotic places too.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, brilliant. Right, I'm going to try and summarize this really long conversation and in-depth that you've given us so much information on in a few takeaways. So I want people to take away the fact that you should be looking at yourself physiologically and mentally and just checking in on yourself regularly. Have that go-to list of things that you can do as self-care. and never go anywhere without a battery charging pack, eh?
Yeah, that's basically it. But the battery charging pack is kind of like the message of self-care, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know what I mean? You've got backup, you've got additional resources. So if you run out of battery, you've got your charging pack and you can keep going. So yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, Briony, it's been amazing to have you on. Thank you ever so much for spending the time with me today. And I will post all of Briony's links as well in the information on my podcast. Thank you ever so much, Briony. Take care.
Lots of love to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And as always, any links or anything mentioned will be in the show notes. If you haven't connected with me yet, I'd love to meet you. So come find me on Instagram at Debbie Westwell. Why not slide into my DMs and tell me what you thought of this episode? And if you like what you hear, then please follow me or hit the bell icon, share with somebody like you who would benefit from listening, and all positive reviews are greatly appreciated. Thank you for being your wonderful self, and I can't wait to chat next time.